I don't know how you could get into a situation where multiple suicide bombings go off in the nearest capital city to this one, where multiple suicide bombings go off at a football match, at a rock venue, drive-by shootings, Kalashnikov attacks in cafes and restaurants, and that wasn't reported, or it just was mentioned, and we all got on with our lives.
I know you told your friend you're not okay.
Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. It's your favorite girl Miriam. If you're coming across my channel for the very first time, you're highly welcome to the family. And to my returning subscribers, you guys are the best. Thanks for always stopping by to watch my videos. So you guys, today I'm back again with another interesting video of Douglas Murray titled Murray Shocks Everyone with These Facts About Islam. I feel like this is actually going to be super interesting. So without much further ado, let's check this out, guys.
The public want to know that information. We want to know. I'm going to go to Paris next weekend. Is it a wise idea? Is it good to go or not?
You are about to watch Douglas Murray argue that terrorists shouldn't be starved of the oxygen of publicity.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm very glad this isn't a debate format, because I think this question is so complex, and I think most of us have such contrary views on this. It's a very good thing that it's not set up as an either-or thing. The first thing I would say, but I agree very much with what Fawaz just said about that Cameron point. I entirely agree. I thought it was an absurd, indeed obscene thing for a Prime Minister of the UK to say that ISIS is an existential threat when it's no such thing.
That is a solid point from Douglas.
However, I do have to push back a little on something that Simon has already said. Terrorism can do serious damage. And as everybody knows, just from that one thing that's already come up twice this evening, the attacks in Paris in November 2015, it still is doing damage. Still, the Parisian economy, the tourist economy is not recovered from that. It's still a city suffering.
I couldn't agree more.
I don't know how you could get into a situation where multiple suicide bombings go off in the nearest capital city to this one, where multiple suicide bombings go off at a football match, at a rock venue, drive-by shootings, Kalashnikov attacks in cafes and restaurants, and that wasn't reported, or it just was mentioned, and we all got on with our lives. The public want to know that information. We want to know. I'm going to go to Paris next weekend. Is it a wise idea? Is it good to go or not?
Another solid point by Douglas.
I have to say that we have to appreciate what the end point of Simon's point of view on this is. In 2013, when two British converts to Islam, two very radical young men, ran over in broad daylight in South London, in this city, ran over a soldier at home on leave from Afghanistan, Drummer Lee Rigby, hacked at his body in the middle of the road, tried to get his head off with machetes, and so on. Simon described that as a mundane act of violence.
Hold on a sec. Are you kidding me? Let's hear that again.
Simon described that as a mundane act of violence. Now, I don't think that is a mundane act. It was in your Guardian column at the time.
Oh, sorry.
Anyhow.
It was a mundane act of violence.
But you see, for most of us, the general public, we don't think that the reporting of a soldier being decapitated in broad daylight by two such men is a mundane thing.
Certainly we don't. We'll come back to Douglas shortly. But let's hear what Simon Jenkins, one of Douglas's opponents in this debate, has to say about terrorists.
They depend upon publicity. The multiplier of publicity is what makes the terrorism act terrorist. Otherwise, it's just a killing. That's why very few terrorist incidents occur in autocratic and dictatorial countries. They don't get any publicity. They get publicity where we give them publicity, and it's on that publicity that they feed. ISIS, interestingly, last week said they regard publicity as their nuclear weapon. It's the thing they rely upon to make their impact. We've become completely obsessed with them. Terrorism has been seized upon by the military defense establishment, effectively to boost their budgets.
That's quite some perspective. But let's hear more from him.
I simply think that the best thing we can possibly do is you cannot not cover news. And I'm sure tonight we'll discuss what this really means. You can't not cover news. You then hand the terrorist over to the much more terrorist thing, which is the rumour. You mustn't allow rumour to dominate news. But we mustn't over-exaggerate the significance of a terrorist incident. The BBC spent 4 days on the Nice atrocity. Obama comes over to march in honour of the Hebdo massacres. It was an appalling way of glorifying this particular obscenity.
Now, back to Douglas. Not only does he disagree with Simon on this, but he also gives a profound insight.
I think, by the way, that the censorship around terrorism already exists to an enormous extent in our societies. The media in this country and in America and elsewhere don't show anything like explicit images of the aftermaths of terrorist attacks. And there is a very good argument that actually if the public saw what those of us who've covered and seen attacks have seen, that their views on this would be a lot harder than they currently are, and that the media actually holds this back from the public, and that as a result the public are less enraged than they would otherwise be by this.
Douglas goes on to ask some deep questions.
But, you know, if you support the motion tonight, how would you do it? How would you stop covering the terrorists when they carry out an attack in Paris for a night and kill 130 people and leave many more wounded for the rest of their lives? How would you do it? How would you do it in the age of the internet? It's plausible you could get a press regulatory body so rigorous that it stopped the remainder of the print press from publishing any information about it. People would go to the internet. How do you shut down the internet from covering this?
But Douglas wasn't quite done.
Now, having said that, there's one very important point on this, which is that obviously the press have to show restraint. And I want to give you two very quick examples in my life of the press clearly not showing restraint on this. And this is where there will be some unanimity on the panel tonight. In 2004, when the British-born man Ken Bigley was held hostage in Iraq by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's group, many of you will remember this. There was a drip feed of information on an hourly and daily basis by Zarqawi's group.
That's right. Douglas tells us why.
And they knew, and we knew from the moment that American forces ended up getting into his compound, that his group were watching the British media like hawks, because Tony Blair was being personally held responsible by a man being held hostage with a knife to his throat. And if you remember, that man, Ken Bigley, was saying on camera, "I blame Tony Blair." And the British press were blaming Tony Blair. And there was a moment there where the combination of an extremist group and the British press effectively helping them could well have brought down a prime minister in a democratic society. It came very, very close at that point.
That is a solid point by Douglas. He goes on to give another example.
It was 10 years after that, in 2014, when Jihadi John, as he was called, Mohammed Emwazi, another British citizen, was executing, murdering, beheading people in the Syrian desert. I would argue that was another time when the British press needed to show restraint, and a lot of it did. You'll remember that The Independent ran a front page saying that we are not showing the photo of this. That may have been an extreme example, but the British press, once again on that occasion, the international press, were being used by that group to have this drumbeat of terror.
The host cuts in with a question for Douglas.
Well, so let me ask you, you bring up Jihadi John, and I think this is an interesting one. Why give him a nickname like Jihadi John? Why not call him by his name, Mohammed Emwazi?
Sure.
Why do we have to come up, the very idea of coming up with nicknames? And also I wanted to ask you about a distinction between covering ISIS propaganda and terrorist attacks. There's a big difference between running their videos of them with the black and white flag saying the Shahada and showing what happened in Paris, right?
Yes, there is. No, there's a very big difference between the two. And sometimes we fall into covering both as if they were the same thing.
Douglas's answer was direct and honest.
But as for that, the nickname point is a very good point. I'm slightly bemused by it myself. Of course, we didn't know his name was Mohammed Emwazi when we knew that he existed and he was the decapitator. So he had to be given some term, I suppose. I do think that the sort of weird jokiness of it is...
The Beatles, I think, coined the term in the British press.
I don't know why people do it. Maybe it's a coping mechanism about something very grotesque and that you can sort of slightly laugh at it. I don't know. It doesn't seem very healthy to me. I've always thought that it familiarizes barbarism.
Now, the host turns to Simon to get his take on all of this.
So let me ask you, Simon, and we'll sort of have a bit more of a fluid chat now. But what you're essentially talking about amounts to self-censorship on a certain level. And I just wonder, does it confuse the role of the journalist at all? Because the journalist traditionally is not supposed to be a judge. The journalist is supposed to be someone who is a filter, who provides information to people who want to receive that information.
Now, hear his response.
This is quite unlike other forms of news. This is a form of, when you're covering a war, you're covering a war. In this case, you are a part of the story, because that's what the other side wants you to be. And in becoming a part of the story, you are, as you said at the beginning, a part of the problem rather than the solution. And I just think, what I'm saying here is I think for newspapers, it is no good simply saying, we cover every story. Because in the first place, you have, as we've been saying, you have a decision to make about how intensively you cover it. I mean, do you fly Hugh Edwards out to Nice?
Let's keep listening.
You have a decision to make as to how intensively you cover a story. But I go beyond that, really, and say you are now the story. You are a part of what the other side wants to happen.
So,
you can't just simply say, it's like another story.
Okay, Douglas, do you agree with that? Is there essentially a synchronicity going on, or a symbiosis between ISIS or groups like ISIS and the media? Are they kind of playing into each other somehow?
Yes, they are. I mean, we know the extent to which people, for instance, in ISIS use the internet to see what their coverage is like, that.
You guys, this is actually a very interesting, conversation and between Douglas Murray and the other invitees. It is really, really interesting because according to what Douglas was saying, he was talking about, the extremists, he was talking about facts about Islam. I can't say he's actually correct and I can't say he's wrong, but in some aspects, due to a lot of things that has happened, about terrorism and all, most of it are always back to Islam, because most of it is either they are disguised as a Muslim, or they are actually a Muslim. And in any country now, if you ask them what they feel about Islam, most of them will say, they are mostly terrorists, they are extremists, they are this, they are that. So I can understand where Douglas' point of view is coming from, giving examples of how Muslims can be Islam in particular can be extremists, they can be terrorism. Give examples of what happened in London, in the UK, about two people that converted to Islam and they attacked somebody on the road or something. So it's crazy. Like I can understand why and where his point of view is coming from, and I would like to know what you guys think as well in the comment section down below about his point of view. Is Douglas actually right in this one? Did he hit the nail on this particular topic? I would like to know in the comment section down below. Let me know your opinion. Anyways, guys, if you're coming across my channel for the very first time, do want to subscribe to this channel. If you have watched this video to this very moment and you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? Do want to subscribe to this channel. Turn on the bell notification so you'll be among the first to get my videos anytime I upload a new video. And I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.